The text came in at 7:52 p.m. on a Wednesday. I was at home having dinner with my wife and 2 kids when my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I picked it up and read, "Trump taught me to never show mercy. You're done here. Don't bother coming in tomorrow." No context, no warning, just a cold, calculated message from my manager, Derek. I stared at the screen for a long time. My wife, Lisa, looked at me and asked, "What's wrong?" I showed her the message. She read it, her face going from confusion to anger. She said, "Can he do that?" I said, "No, he can't." Then I typed back slowly, deliberately. "He also taught me to sue. Expect to hear from my lawyer." I hit send and put my phone on silent. 1 week later, Derek had 15 missed calls from corporate, his own lawyer, and HR. 2 weeks later, he was unemployed and facing a lawsuit. Let me back up. My name is Marcus Williams. I'm 37 years old, a regional sales manager for a commercial real estate firm in Phoenix, Arizona. I've been in sales for 12 years, worked my way up from cold calling to managing a team of 8 people. I'm good at my job. My numbers prove it. Last year, my team closed $14 million in deals. The year before that, $12 million. I've won awards, been featured in company newsletters, and trained new hires. Derek became our district manager about 10 months ago. He came in with a reputation, aggressive, results-driven, a closer, who had supposedly turned around underperforming regions. He wore expensive suits, drove a Range Rover, and had a habit of quoting Donald Trump like he was reciting gospel. The first time I met him in a regional meeting, he said, "Trump built an empire by being ruthless. That's how we're going to dominate this market." He smiled when he said it. Nobody else did. At first, I thought it was just bravado. New managers do that. They come in, make bold statements, and then settle into the reality of the job. But Derek didn't settle. He escalated. He started implementing what he called Trump-style management. Public humiliation for missed targets, sudden firings to send a message, and a culture of fear disguised as high performance. I watched him do it to others first. There was Jennifer, a sales associate who had been with the company for 6 years. She missed her quarterly target by 8%, still respectable numbers, just not the inflated goal Derek had set. He called her into a meeting with the entire team present and said, "Trump fired people on TV. I'm firing you in front of your peers so everyone learns what failure looks like." She cried. She packed her desk while we all watched. I felt sick. Then there was Carlos, a senior associate who questioned one of Derek's strategies in a team meeting. Derek smiled, nodded, and said, "Interesting perspective." 2 days later, Carlos was reassigned to cold calling, a demotion that effectively ended his career trajectory. When Carlos complained to HR, Derek told them Carlos had performance issues. Carlos quit 3 weeks later. I kept my head down. I did my job. I hit my targets. But I was watching. I was documenting, and I was starting to see a pattern. Derek loved to talk about Donald Trump. He quoted The Art of the Deal, referenced Trump's business tactics, and kept a framed photo of Trump Tower on his desk. He used Trump's name to justify every cruel decision, every unethical practice, every violation of company policy and labor law. I started keeping records. Every unfair termination, every act of discrimination, every time Derek violated employment law. I kept screenshots of text messages, copies of emails, recordings of meetings where he had humiliated employees. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew I needed proof. The first entry in my documentation was simple. February 3rd, Derek publicly fired Jennifer in front of entire team for missing target by 8%. Cited Trump's apprentice as justification. I saved it in an encrypted folder on my personal laptop. The second entry came a week later. February 10th, Carlos demoted to cold calling after questioning Derek's strategy. Derek told HR Carlos had performance issues. False. The entries started to pile up. 1 a week, then 2, then almost daily. Then it was my turn. Derek started targeting me about 2 months ago. It started subtly, questioning my decisions in front of clients, reassigning my best accounts to other managers, excluding me from important meetings. I asked him once if there was a problem. He leaned back in his chair, smiled, and said, "Trump said you're either a killer or you're not. I'm starting to think you're not." I said, "My numbers say otherwise." He said, "Numbers aren't everything. Loyalty is." I didn't argue. I just nodded and went back to my office. But that night I added another entry to my documentation. I also did something else. I started reaching out to former employees. I found them on LinkedIn through mutual connections in industry groups. I sent careful messages. "Hi, I'm Marcus from the Phoenix office. I'm documenting some management issues and wondered if you'd be willing to share your experience." Most people were hesitant at first. They had signed severance agreements, they were afraid of retaliation, they just wanted to move on. But when I told them I had evidence that I was building a case, they started to open up. The first person to respond was Jennifer. We met for coffee at a place far from the office. She looked tired, defeated. She told me about the public firing, about how Derek had humiliated her in front of the team, about how she hadn't been able to find work since because Derek had bad-mouthed her to other firms in the industry. She said, "He told me Trump taught him that you have to destroy people completely so they can't come back." Those were his exact words. She gave me copies of her termination paperwork, screenshots of messages from Derek, and the names of 4 other people who had been pushed out under similar circumstances. Then I talked to Carlos. He had found work at a smaller firm, but he was still angry. He told me about the demotion, about how Derek had lied to HR, about how he'd been forced to quit because the hostile environment became unbearable. He said, "Derek used to brag about using Trump's tactics, intimidation, retaliation, making examples of people. He thought it made him a strong leader. It just made him a bully." He sent me the emails showing his reassignment, the false performance reviews Derek had created, and recordings of meetings where Derek had berated him. One by one, the stories came in. A woman named Patricia who had been fired after she reported Derek for making inappropriate comments about her appearance. Derek told HR she was too sensitive. A man named James who had been terminated after he refused to falsify client reports. Derek said he was not a team player. A woman named Sandra who had been pushed out after she took medical leave for surgery. Derek told people she was weak. I compiled everything into a single document. I worked on it late at night after Lisa and the kids were asleep. I organized it by category: wrongful termination, discrimination, retaliation, hostile work environment, labor law violations. I included dates, names, evidence. I cross-referenced everything with Arizona employment law and federal regulations. I made sure it was airtight. By the time I was done, the document was 94 pages long. The executive summary was on page 1, but I included every piece of evidence, every testimony, every pattern of abuse. It was comprehensive, detailed, and damning. I also did something else. I consulted with an employment lawyer. Her name was Rebecca Chen, and she had a reputation for taking on corporate abuse cases. I sent her the document and asked for a consultation. We met in her office on a Saturday morning. She spent 2 hours reviewing the evidence. Then she looked at me and said, "This is one of the most well-documented cases of workplace abuse I've seen. You have wrongful termination, discrimination, retaliation, and a hostile work environment. If you want to pursue this, you have a strong case." I said, "I want to pursue it." She said, "Then let's get started." I didn't plan to use it immediately. I just wanted to be ready. But then came that Wednesday night. That text from Derek. "Trump taught me to never show mercy. You're done here. Don't bother coming in tomorrow." I knew what it meant. He was firing me. Not for performance. My numbers were excellent. My team was thriving. My clients loved me. He was firing me because I had become a threat, because I asked questions, because I didn't worship him the way he expected. But I had been preparing for this moment, so I didn't panic. I didn't beg. I just sent him that response. He also taught me to sue, expect to hear from my lawyer. Then I called Rebecca. It was 8:15 p.m. But she answered. I told her what happened. She said, "Forward me the text message. We're filing first thing tomorrow morning." Thursday morning, Rebecca filed a lawsuit against Derek personally, and the company for wrongful termination, retaliation, discrimination, and creating a hostile work environment. She also filed a complaint with the Arizona Civil Rights Division and sent a demand letter to the company's corporate office outlining the evidence and demanding immediate action. By Thursday afternoon, Derek's phone was ringing. Corporate called him. HR called him. The company's legal department called him. His personal lawyer called him. He tried calling me 15 times. I didn't answer. Friday morning, I got a call from the company's head of HR, a woman named Margaret. She said, "Marcus, we've received the complaint and the lawsuit. We're taking this very seriously. Can you come in Monday to discuss this matter?" I said. "My lawyer will be in touch to schedule a meeting." She said, "We want to resolve this quickly and fairly." I said, "Then you should have acted when I reported Derek's behavior 6 months ago." There was a long pause. Then she said, "We'll be in touch." Over the weekend, things escalated. Rebecca sent the 94-page document to corporate, along with testimony from Jennifer, Carlos, Patricia, James, Sandra, and 6 other former employees. She also sent copies to the company's board of directors and their investors. Monday morning, I didn't go into the office. I stayed home and waited. At 9:47 a.m., I got a text from Jennifer. "Derek just got escorted out by security. Corporate is here. What did you do?" I didn't respond. I just sat in my living room staring at my phone, feeling a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. At 11:23 a.m., Margaret called me. She said, "Marcus, Derek has been terminated effective immediately. We're conducting a full investigation into the allegations and we'd like to discuss a resolution with you and your attorney. We're also reaching out to the employees who were wrongfully terminated to offer remedies." I said, "I'll have my attorney contact you." She said, "We're committed to making this right." I said, "We'll see." The company sent an email that afternoon. "Effective immediately, Derek is no longer with our organization. We are committed to fostering a respectful and inclusive workplace for all employees." That was it. No apology, no explanation. Just a fact, delivered in corporate language. But the consequences for Derek were just beginning. The lawsuit moved forward. Rebecca deposed Derek, and he crumbled under questioning. He admitted to the firings, to the public humiliations, to using Trump's tactics as justification. He tried to defend himself by saying he was just being a strong leader, but the evidence was overwhelming. The company settled with me 3 months later. I can't disclose the amount due to the settlement agreement, but it was substantial. They also settled with Jennifer, Carlos, Patricia, James, Sandra, and the others. They issued formal apologies, expunged false performance reviews, and agreed to implement new management training and oversight. Derek's career was over. He couldn't find work in the industry. His LinkedIn profile disappeared. The Range Rover was sold. The expensive suits hung unused in his closet. Everything he had built, or pretended to build, collapsed in a matter of weeks. The employees who had been wrongfully terminated got justice. Jennifer used her settlement to start her own consulting business. Carlos got a senior position at a competing firm with better pay. Patricia, James, and Sandra all found new jobs and moved on with their lives. I went back to work. Not at the same company, but at a competitor who had heard about the case and reached out to me. They offered me a director position with a significant raise and a team of 12. They said, "We need leaders who stand up for what's right." I kept the documentation for a while. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. A reminder that invoking great names doesn't make you great. A reminder that bullying disguised as leadership always collapses eventually. Derek loved to quote Donald Trump. He used Trump's name to justify cruelty, to excuse unethical behavior, to rationalize abuse. But Donald Trump built a real estate empire. Derek just built a trail of broken people and lawsuits. I don't know where Derek is now. I heard he moved to another state, tried to start over in a different industry. I wonder if he learned anything from what happened. I wonder if he still thinks quoting Trump makes him a strong leader. I hope not. But I'm not optimistic. What I care about is that Jennifer got justice, that Carlos got his career back, that Patricia, James, and Sandra got settlements and apologies, that the people still working at that company don't have to live in fear anymore. That text message is still on my phone. Trump taught me to never show mercy. You're done here, don't bother coming in tomorrow. I haven't deleted it. It reminds me that cruelty often hides behind the names of powerful people, that invoking someone's success doesn't make you successful. It just makes you a coward using their reputation as a shield. If you're reading this and you're in a situation like mine, here's what I learned. Document everything. Keep records. Find the people who have been hurt and ask them to share their stories. Build a case not out of revenge but out of necessity. Consult with an employment lawyer. And when the time is right, take action. Don't shout. Don't make threats. Just present the facts, calmly and clearly, and let the evidence speak for itself. 1 week. That's how long it took from the moment I sent that text to the moment Derek's world started collapsing. 1 week from threat to consequence. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. It was just the quiet, systematic dismantling of a system of abuse. Let me tell you about the months that followed. The lawsuit became public. Industry publications wrote about it. Other employees from other regions started coming forward with their own stories about Derek. The company faced additional lawsuits, regulatory scrutiny, and reputational damage. But something good came out of it. The company implemented new policies, mandatory management training, anonymous reporting systems, third-party oversight of terminations. They hired a new head of HR who actually took complaints seriously. They created a culture where people felt safe speaking up. Lisa asked me one night after the settlement was finalized if I regretted it, if I wished I had just kept quiet, kept my job, avoided the conflict. I thought about it for a long time. Then I said, no, because if I had done nothing, Derek would still be there, still hurting people, and I would have been complicit. She nodded and squeezed my hand. She had been scared during that week of uncertainty, worried about what would happen if I lost the lawsuit, if we couldn't pay the mortgage, if Derek retaliated. But she had supported me anyway. That meant everything. I started thinking about the broader implications of what had happened, about how many workplaces have a Derek, someone who uses the names of powerful people to justify terrible behavior, who hides behind strong leadership while destroying lives. About how many people suffer in silence because they don't think anyone will believe them, or because they're too afraid to speak up. The system is designed to protect people like Derek. It's designed to make it hard to report abuse, to make victims feel isolated and powerless. But the system isn't invincible. It can be challenged. It can be changed. It just takes one person willing to document the truth and take action. I'm not a hero. I'm just a sales manager who got tired of watching people get hurt and decided to do something about it. I'm not special. I'm not brave. I'm just someone who had access to evidence and the stubbornness to keep going even when it felt hopeless. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this story, it's this. You have more power than you think. You might not have a fancy title or a big salary or a corner office, but you have the power to document the truth. You have the power to reach out to others who have been hurt. You have the power to consult with a lawyer and build a case. You have the power to take action. It won't be easy. It will be scary. There will be moments when you want to give up, when you wonder if it's worth it. But it is. Because on the other side of that fear is a workplace where people are treated with dignity, where Jennifer gets justice, where Carlos gets his career back, where you get to go home at the end of the day and feel like you did something that mattered. 1 week. That's how long it took for the truth to dismantle a system of abuse. 1 week from the moment I sent that text to the moment Derek's phone started ringing with 15 missed calls. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. It was just the slow, steady collapse of a lie that had been propped up for too long. And me? I'm still here. Still closing deals. Still managing teams. Still living a life that's not glamorous, but is mine. And that's enough. I look at that documentation sometimes, still saved in an encrypted folder on my laptop. It's a reminder of what happened, of what we went through, but it's also a reminder of what's possible when ordinary people decide they've had enough. Derek thought he could fire me the way Trump fired people on The Apprentice. He thought invoking Trump's name gave him that right. But Trump built businesses. Derek just built a trail of lawsuits and broken careers. When I said, "He also taught me to sue," I wasn't making a threat. I was stating a fact that Derek had forgotten in his rush to play the ruthless executive, that someone was me. And if you're in a situation like I was, that someone can be you too. The corporate world is different now for me. I see the red flags earlier. I recognize the patterns faster. I know what questions to ask, what documents to save, what lines should never be crossed. And every time I hear a manager invoke the name of a powerful person to justify bad behavior, I think about that Wednesday night. Derek texting. Trump taught me to never show mercy. Me responding. He also taught me to sue. 1 week. 15 missed calls. And justice.